Hey folks, I'm Kurt Indovina. This is GameSpot, and today we are talking about Life is Strange, the new installment, True Colors. And joining me is Jon, the narrative director. Jon, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I assure you, the pleasure is all mine. So to kick it off, there's a lot of different things that I think are being done from what I've seen in True Colors, but I really want to kind of start off on your role from a narration standpoint. And like one of the bigger, more obvious things is this is the first one that isn't being done in a chapter format. And for people who've played Life is Strange, there's definitely like an ebb and flow to complementing those chapters and being kind of like stretched over time. What was that like for you to be able to kind of approach this game as something that would be coming out as is in its entirety from start to finish and kind of adapting from the previous style of games into this new style?
In a lot of ways, it was pretty familiar because we retained a chapter style that keeps the sort of cadence that the previous Life is Strange games had. You're going to see cliffhangers, you're going to see mysteries, of course, but what we really wanted to present is the option for players that want to just tear through beginning to end. They have that ability. For players that want to enjoy it in an episodic format, I think it definitely fits that mold. So in terms of our job in scripting the game, the only real difference is that we just charged right through. There was no break. There was no seeing episode 1 come out while we were still writing episode 3. And I think it allowed us to have a level of control over the entire script that was really beneficial because anyone that has written a tremendous amount of words before knows that sometimes you want to go back and tweak a few decisions early on when you discover new things down the road. So I think we really loved getting to have that level of control over the whole story in releasing it at once.
You kind of bring up a good point about like the first chapter comes out when you may only still be writing the third chapter. What is that? Is there a sort of feedback loop in that, or is there sort of maybe even a relief in some way to be able to just have it done, have it written in its whole, and then put it out into the world?
I think there are trade-offs because the Life is Strange community is just extraordinary. So there's something so bolstering about getting that reaction to a first episode or even a trailer release while you're still working on the script. You know, it's so affirmative to see players come into contact with these characters for the first time and everything you've been dreaming of is coming to fruition. And that gives you a kind of propulsion. That being said, we have from Life is Strange Before the Storm, we have that relationship with the community where we kind of carried that excitement into Life is Strange True Colors, and you know, the ability to craft a new player character in Alex that we really fell in love with, and we felt like players were going to fall in love with as well, and bringing Steph into the world was another piece that we were really excited about. So it just kind of forced us to hold on to our hats a little bit longer and wait for the community to get to catch on to what we were doing. But it did give that creative control that I think really paid off in the end, where hopefully everything feels holistic across the board, and that there's a really well-crafted journey from chapter 1 to chapter 5.
That's a perfect segue into Alex. So one thing that I'm really kind of excited about, or at least it's interesting to look at all of the Life is Strange games as a whole at this point, of course, obviously having not played True Colors, but each game has kind of like this duo. So in the first you have Max and Chloe, and then even there's Chloe and Rachel, and then Life is Strange 2, it's Sean and Daniel. And in this case, or at least at this moment, Alex seems to be like this very focused weight, this like kind of sole protagonist. I know you mentioned Steph, but what is it? Is this a deliberate change, or is there some stuff that we just haven't seen yet to kind of like develop that world out between one sole character? Yeah,
that's a very insightful pickup that I think you found there. I would say it's something that developed over the course of the story. We didn't set out saying, let's move away from a kind of one central relationship. We ended up finding a number of central relationships. We have the relationship with Alex's brother early on. Then we have the relationships with characters like Ryan and Steph. And we really wanted to let the player craft where those relationships go in a significant way. But then we have sort of the town of Haven as a whole. And because this was a story about finding a home, the ensemble cast of Haven became really important over time. It also let us craft all these great emotional experiences for Alex to get to engage in with her power. So I think the end result is one where Alex's journey as the player character is the core of the story. And I think hopefully all the other characters are significant in their own ways, but they will impact primarily who Alex is in the end and who the players want Alex to be in a really fun way. So everything really hinges on Alex, and that was the same for us in the writer's room, just falling in love with her and getting to see the world through her eyes. And I think players are gonna really love that experience as well.
And I think just off the tidbits that I learned from that, I think maybe that even makes that might even make sense, considering Alex's power, which is basically like an empath turned to the nth degree. And the one thing that I find really interesting, or I'm looking forward to, is each game so far, like Max has the ability to rewind time, and Daniel has like this kind of almost like overwhelming power of just being able to control things around him. But those powers don't necessarily seem, and maybe I could be totally just misreading it, but like they don't seem as emotionally tied to the characters themselves, where in this case, Alex's power at its full force, her emotional ability, quite literally, to read other people. Was that kind of a significant choice, and maybe focusing more on Alex as like this soul entity, because her power is going to be so attached to being able to read other people's emotions?
Yeah, that was very deliberate. We wanted a power that was deeply ingrained in the player character and in the player's experience throughout the game. And it kind of started as almost like a fascinating question that we posed to ourselves coming off of Before the Storm, where Life is Strange games are these incredibly emotional experiences, and we wanted to ask ourselves, what would it be like to have a player character who goes through life experiencing kind of what a player does when they step into a player character in a Life is Strange game, to be foisted into other people's points of views and other people's deep emotions, and maybe not even have a ton of control over who that happens with and when it happens, and what would that do to them to have that kind of immense sensitivity in viewing the world. And one of the things that came out of that, we realized, is that might make that person an artist in how they kind of sublimate the pain that they go through and the pain that they feel and experience from others, but also the joy, the broad range of emotions, and turn that into a form of expression for them. It really felt like this kind of artistic journey So that really was the starting point for us, and everything that followed out of the character of Alex as she came into form was born out of it. So there really is that kind of intricate connection between who she is as a character in the story and the power that the player gets to wield throughout the game.
There's unfortunately we only have a little time left, and there's like a wide array of things I would love to talk about. Like one thing you mentioned was kind of how the ability to read some people's emotions can almost over bombard Alex's character and put her into these scenarios, which we haven't really seen that much about, and I'm really, really curious about it. But I'm going to hold on to that for us to experience when the game comes out. So with this last few minutes, I want to talk about Haven itself, because we're in the first game, it is in, the Northwest area, and you get to explore, or Oregon, I think. You get to explore different areas then, and then Life is Strange 2, it's almost like this road trip film from, the Northwest down to Mexico. But this seems very centralized into a town. And I'm just the environments are so important to Life is Strange and creating a mood, just as the characters are. And I just want to get your perspective from a narrative standpoint, kind of focusing it all on this one area. And if that's kind of like how the exploration will play into it differently than the other games.
Yeah, exploration is huge in this game. And one of our pillars from a story and design standpoint was giving players the freedom to explore, to engage with the environment all around them, to be able to walk freely along the main stretch of Havens, go into stores that they find along the way, interact with characters, uncover secrets, use their power, and just be untethered to have that experience. And again, that was really driven by Alex as a character, because this is a story about someone who's never had a home before, who has come from a broken home, a broken family, has struggled through the foster care system, has reconnected with her brother after many years, and is looking for her place in the world. And the question for her as she arrives in Haven is this that place for me? And I think so many of us in the writer's room and throughout the studio related to that as maybe transplants to Colorado ourselves, or just kind of being on different journeys in our lives, whether that's going to college or moving to a new town. And there's this heady excitement that comes along with that. There's this feeling like all the colors are just a little bit sharper, and everything is just a little bit more vibrant, and you want to throw yourself into it. And for Alex, with her power, she really throws herself into it. And again, there's a kind of gift and a curse to that, because it engenders great intimacy very quickly with the community, but it's also incredibly difficult and volatile, and can lead to really challenging situations.
Leaning all in on the colors there, the true colors of Life is Strange. True colors.
I didn't even have that. That's all you.
Unfortunately, I could talk to you all day about this, but our time is up. But nonetheless, Jon, thank you so much for taking time to talk about this. This was super insightful and really exciting, because this feels like a really thoughtful departure, but also like still fully ingrained into what Life is Strange is. But of course, we'll find out later. With that said, when is the game coming out? When can we play it, Jon?
Yeah, the game comes out September 10th, 2021. We are so excited for fans to play it, and I really appreciate getting to talk to you about it today.